Like my other two videos, this is not a critique of Naruto's side characters in general. This is just a video of me trying to figure out ways to include some characters I like in the story some more. Last time I covered all the way up to the 5 Kage Summit, so today we're covering the entirety of the war arc. Yay! The first change we need to make has to do with this scene of Naruto talking to all of his friends about how to deal with Sasuke. In the original story, he just says leave it to me and refuses to elaborate, but in this version we can turn this into a moment where a couple of characters, specifically Shikamaru and Hinata, will actually find themselves relating to Sasuke slightly. Even in the original story, I think a scene like this should have been here, considering only a couple of arcs ago, Shikamaru went on a mission motivated entirely by revenge, and Azuma's passing was paralleled with Jiraiya's during the Pain arc, an event which allowed Naruto to finally understand Sasuke. So I found it weird how Shikamaru's whole thing with Azuma was never brought up in relation to this as well. Naruto should draw attention to the fact that although Shikamaru and Hinata handled it very differently, their grudges against Sasuke are driven by similar feelings to Sasuke's grudge against Konoha in this version. But Naruto's not going to defend Sasuke in this scene. He'll still remain ambiguous about how he's going to deal with him, just while pointing out the contradictions with their characters at the same time. This leads us to Naruto's training to become a perfect jinchuriki, as well as the first day of the war arc, which had the most missed opportunities in the story by a country mile. First off, we'll have to once again find suitable replacements for Yamato here, and it'll be the same two characters who replaced him in the Tenchi Bridge arc, those two being Anko and Hinata. Hinata being here means she can be present for Naruto's training at the Waterfall of Truth, something I couldn't believe was not the case in the original story. That the part of his training which revolves around learning to love himself and literally embrace the darkest aspects of himself does not include Hinata, a character who was in his corner and loved him from day one. It would make so much sense for her to be the one to help him overcome his severe emotional trauma by offering her perspective and shedding light on what she finds so admirable about him. It would also be a really natural resolution to the confession scene from the Pain arc by having the two of them officially become a couple here. Anko will mainly be here to replace Yamato in this fight against Kabuto, but I want her to be a lot more involved in this fight than he was. I'd also like to extend the fight a bit more since this is a conflict that at least had some precedent set for it from the beginning, with both of these characters having a relationship with Orochimaru. So seeing what an actual battle between them would look like, both having a snake-based moveset, would be a hell of a lot more interesting than seeing Kurotsuchi just spit out a bunch of mud balls everywhere. The fight will end with Anko getting kidnapped like Yamato did originally, which works out perfectly since this puts her in the exact same position she was in the original story. The rest of this part is good though. Deidara vs Onoki is fine, Might Guy's fight against Kisame is quick but a satisfying conclusion for their rivalry, Konan vs Obito is great, and the rest of Naruto's Jinchuriki training as well as the Minato flashback works really well emotionally, even if I really hate how this new form looks. I don't have as many or really anything good to say about the following chapters though, but with stinkers like Kankuro vs Sasori, Sai vs his brother, Mifune vs Hanzo, and freaking Samui, Atsui, and Darawi vs Kinkaku and Ginkaku, I don't think anybody can really blame me. The first day of the war arc to me is a prime example of why neglecting a lot of the Konoha teams throughout Shippuden was kind of a big mistake, because without the ability to center conflicts around characters the audience is actually endeared to, the plot starts to feel a lot less focused, and like the writer is just throwing a bunch of shit at the wall to see what fights will stick, which results in essentially none of them doing so. It's no coincidence the only fights in this part of the story which were memorable in the slightest have to do with characters we actually gave a shit about, like Kakashi's fight against Haku and Zabuza, and Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji's fight against Azuma. Even these aren't the greatest though, as the former is mostly dedicated to something we've already seen before beat for beat, while the latter is tied to a really stupid character arc. Like, where the hell did this Choji is too gentle shit come from? In part 1, he had no problem just killing a motherfucker, but in Shippuden he goes all pussy for some reason. I'd understand it if it was specifically, oh, he doesn't want to kill Azuma again, but instead the story presents this fight as just one example of him generally lacking confidence and being too afraid to take charge. You know, never mind the fact that he immediately decided to fight Jirobo without any prompting from anyone else. But whatever, I'm getting sidetracked. Let's establish who we're bringing back, and not bringing back with the Edo Tensei. Like a lot of other people, I think it would be a crime not to bring back legendary characters like Shisui and Sakamo the White Fang, and to make this possible, we'll also cut the in-story justifications for why this couldn't have happened. On that note though, I actually disagree with the idea of reviving Jiraiya, since I think part of the power of his death is the fact that Naruto never really got any kind of closure with him, so bringing him back and potentially ruining that doesn't make sense to me. It also doesn't make sense to me to revive any of the Akatsuki members aside from Nagato, Itachi, and Deidara. Sasori, Konan, and Kisame all have satisfactory conclusions to their characters already, and Kakazu's only role in this arc is to get stomped on by Choji and Tenten. Other characters I'm cutting are Ginkaku and Kinkaku, since their battle against the First Division is completely dog water and they ruined the entire point of the war by making it pointless, Kimimaru, who I already brought back in this version of the story during the Itachi Pursuit arc, and Hanzo, whose scuffle with Mifune might be the worst fight in all of Naruto. Yes, that's including Team Guy versus Team Guy, because that fight at least revolved around characters I liked. There is some potential to have a fight between Tsunade and Hanzo here, since she's the only character who's actually interacted with him before, but I don't know, that doesn't really sound too cool to me. She also gets deployed onto the battlefield later on in a much cooler way and for a much cooler purpose, so I feel like having her enter here would lessen the impact of that moment. Plus, it would be a bit messy since she has to go and stop Naruto from joining the battle after this and then go back to HQ, and it's just not worth it, so we're completely cutting Hanzo here. And finally, we'll pay off something I set up all the way back in the first part of this series. Since Neji and Choji are dead in this version, we can bring them back as Edo Tensei and actually add some emotional stakes to the first day of the war. So Choji will be brought back and fight alongside Ozuma against Shikamaru and Ino in order to fully resolve the damage dealt to the squad from my rewrite and bring closure to all of the characters involved. And the Hyuga battle will actually involve an interesting character this time around by having the more general struggle between the two branches serve as a backdrop to the more personal relationship between Hinata and Neji, which in this version would also relate to the central conflict of the story being Naruto's relationship with Sasuke. Because of that, these two fights will be serving as a resolution to the grudges these characters had against Sasuke, as Neji and Choji could both offer their perspectives on the situation and help Hinata and Shikamaru respectively come to terms with their deaths. It's also here where I'd kind of like to retroactively turn Kiba into more of a support character for Hinata, like he'll just be here to help her sort through her feelings like a big brother or something. I mean, that's kind of how they were in the Chunin exams, so I think giving them that kind of relationship could work. Look, not everybody needs to be a main character or main side character, you know what I mean. Like I said before, it's called optimizing side characters, not blindly giving them a ton of shit to do even if it's not interesting. Next up is Kankuro's surprise attack division, and since we've gotten rid of Sasori, Kankuro's only opponent in this version will be Deidara, which is still gonna be a lame fight, not gonna lie. But we'll recontextualize it by making it about Kankuro being super mad at Deidara for almost killing Gaara. We'll also move Sakura to this division so she comes into contact with Chio later on, because if we're going to bring her back, we might as well have her fight the only character she had an on-screen developing relationship with. And she'll also be brought back with her puppets since what the hell is she gonna do without them? This fight can also be used as an opportunity to remind the audience of the revival jutsu she used in the Kazekage rescue arc, and retcon the statement that it can only be used by her so that anyone with incredible amounts of skill in medical ninjutsu can use it. This will be important later on. Shino will be moved to this division as well, seeing as he is Sai's replacement in this version, but he doesn't have a brother like Sai does, so we'll have to bring in a more suitable opponent for him to face instead, and the only character I can think of is Tsurune, a member of his clan, someone who can be brought back with the Edo Tensei, and is actually his opponent in a filler episode of the anime. Unfortunately though, we can't use the backstory that episode came up with because it doesn't align that well with this version of the character's history, so instead we'll make this fight about Shino's newfound desire to reshape the Foundation after Danzo's death and being inspired to think for himself over the course of the story. We've also got Kakashi, Might Guy, and Rock Lee versus Haku, Zabuza, and the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist right after this. Like I said, Kakashi fighting Haku and Zabuza again is kind of a waste, as we've already seen this before. So we'll be removing Haku and Zabuza from this arc and replacing them with Sakumo Hatake, a far more suitable opponent for Kakashi and one that'll make for an emotional battle. Sakumo is apparently really freaking powerful, like stronger than the 3 Sannin powerful, so I think making this a 2v1 by throwing in Guy to help Kakashi here is justified. Speaking of which, I found this fight to be really strange in retrospect, since we later learned that Guy's dad died in a battle against the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist, but once they're revived, he doesn't say shit about them. So let's reveal that information here and give the characters a more personal stake in this fight, specifically have it be about giving Rock Lee a grudge match against these guys and making sure to pay them back for his sensei, who won't have the opportunity to do it himself. We can also make him finally open the 7th gate here to add some more hype factor to this moment, while also cutting out all of Suigetsu's interruptions to explain each sword, because fuck him, and by the time these scuffles are over, Kakashi will have a much more effective crash out in response to his literal father, who he just recently came to an understanding with, being used by Kabuto in such a disgusting way. The last thing I need to change about the first day of the war is the sequence of a Zetsu clone disguised as Neji going around and killing people in the Alliance. Neji is dead, so here the Zetsu clone will be disguised as Kiba instead. Sakura will still beat it up though. So moving on to the second day of the war, we immediately need to talk about Obito's use of the 6th jinchuriki. There's this moment in the story where Naruto has a talk with all of them, and it's presented as though it's this big triumphant moment where a bunch of cool characters come together, but it sort of falls flat because we don't know anything about these guys. So to fix that, we're gonna send them out to attack some of the divisions at the start of day 2. This kills 2 birds with 1 stone, as not only can we flesh out these characters some more, but it also raises the danger levels from a bunch of fodder-ass Zetsu clones to the fucking jinchuriki. However, I don't want them to have their tailed beast inside of them at first, and this is for 2 reasons. 1, because it wouldn't make sense for Obito to send these guys out and risk losing the tailed beast he needs to summon the 10 tails, and 2, because never getting to see any of the jinchuriki fight outside of their cloak forms for more than like 2 seconds is a massive shame, and we'd be able to see what that would look like if Obito initially deployed them as regular ninja, just with the Rinnegan and Sharingan implanted into them. If you want to add another reason Obito is using the jinchuriki like this, then we can say he's just using their shared third vision to gauge where Naruto is on the battlefield or something. This just leaves us with the question of which divisions to send them to, and for me, the 5th division is out since Mifune is the only named character there, the 4th division is also out since they're already dealing with the 4 previous Kage as well as Madara later on, and the 3rd division is off limits as well since Kakashi and my guy are already heavily involved in the fight against Obito, which means the only divisions we have left are the 1st division where Shikamaru and Ino are stationed, the 2nd division with Hinata and Kiba, and the surprise attack division where Sakura and Shino are in this version. 6 Jinchuriki, 3 divisions, 2 for each one. It's perfect. What's a lot less perfect though is coming up with the specific matchups between characters, and that's because I have no meaningful information about some of these guys. Someone like Fu I could match up against Hinata just because she's described as having a similar personality to Naruto, and if we're meant to be endeared to these characters, seeing her interact with Hinata and Kiba could be a funny way of making her more likable. And Yagura at least has a backstory of going through the same graduation death matches as Zabuza did, as well as the history of being genjutsu mind controlled by Obito, which could tie into Shino's experiences with the Foundation in this version. However, I honestly don't care for this connection that much. It's not only tangential, but also kind of unnecessary since it doesn't add anything new to Shino's character. I can't imagine a lot of these matchups adding anything to any of the characters though, which is why I'd mainly want them to flesh out the Jinchuriki while also just being cool fights, like in terms of interplay between power sets and abilities, you know, stuff like that. But all I've got is the most shallow shit like, Yukito has the Tiger Beast, and Kiba is a wolf. Utakata uses water, and Sakura has an Earth Chakra nature in this version, so those two characters could fight each other. Han and Roshi are the only ones left, so they'll fight Shikamaru and Ino. I don't know, man, their power sets are all so vague. Like, I know Roshi can use lava style, and he can spit lava balls at people, and Han uses steam ninjutsu, which Shikamaru could maybe come up with a strategy to deal with, but look, the point is, if you think there's a better matchup in terms of interplay between abilities, then you can match up these characters however you want. Personally though, I'm just gonna stick with this. Like in canon, once Naruto joins the war, a whole bunch of his clones will be sent to each division in order to help fight off the Jinchuriki, as well as all the Zetsu clones still running around in the background. And the only two things I need to change after this scene for a while is adding a scene where Obito calls all the Jinchuriki to his side again and places the tailed beast within them for his confrontation with Naruto, as well as adding Lee to the group that fights Obito. Here our jobs get a lot easier for a bit, as pretty much everything from Gaara fighting his dad all the way up to the beginning stages of Madara's fight with the 5 Kage I would change nothing about. The ending of the Kage fight I definitely would though, as Tsunade's gonna have to be in much better condition at the end of this fight than she was in canon. She should still be injured, but she'll need to be just well enough to make it over to where Naruto is relatively quickly. And to justify this, we can say that Onoki was able to lighten the weight of the boulder that crushed her so she wasn't damaged too badly. I'll come back to this later, so let's move on to Itachi's and Sasuke's fight against Kabuto, since we'll be including Shisui's Edo Tensei here to turn the fight into a 2v2 and force Sasuke to carry his weight a bit more in it. Plus, I think it'd be pretty cool to see Itachi try and play around Koto and Matsukami, since it adds the threat of him potentially switching sides again, which would make the fight way more tense. From the end of this fight onward, we run into some pretty big issues, since I really don't like Orochimaru's revival, but I do like the 4 Hokage coming back because of him. To circumvent this problem, we can just have Kabuto do all the Grim Reaper shit instead, since he becomes a good guy after going through that Izanami self-discovery process, but we'd have to make his redemption happen almost immediately. Is this an ass-pull? Yes, but it's a much more standard ass-pull than whatever the hell this is. The much bigger issue comes from the moment the Ten Tails gets revived, since this literally can't happen in our version of the story. Ginkaku and Kinkaku don't exist, so the Ten Tails can't come out here, at least not without Kurama and Gyuki being extracted from Naruto and Bee respectively. And while we can have Obito or Madara extract the tailed beast easily with the demonic statue chains, this would lead to the deaths of Naruto and Bee. Now, there are several ways to revive someone in the Naruto-verse, the most plausible one for this scenario being the revival jutsu Chiyo used to bring Gaara back in Kazekage Rescue. The only problem is it can only be used on one person because it takes the life of the caster, and the only person who could feasibly cast it is Tsunade. This is why I changed the Kage fight. Between Naruto and Bee, we're forced to bring back Naruto since he's the main character, which means this would lead to both Tsunade and Bee dying in the war arc. And I know this might piss some people off, but keep in mind this is a war, and the number of casualties of named characters being so low in the actual story is freaking ridiculous. I also think these deaths would have made for some pretty damn good emotional moments, which in turn would have done a much better job at creating an all is lost feeling on the battlefield. The moment the original story tries to do this is with Neji's death, which not only doesn't work at all considering he basically disappeared from the story for like 500 chapters, but also creates another problem for us since, like with the summoning of the Ten Tails, this also couldn't happen in our version considering he's already dead. But as one of my commenters pointed out, we can just have Hinata's dad die here instead, which would be a natural progression of the earlier fight against Edo Tensei Neji. With Hinata's dad, Killer Bee, and Tsunade all dying here back to back to back, on top of the fact that Shikamaru's and Ino's dads will still be dead here, on top of the fact that Naruto will have basically just come back to life and wouldn't have Kurama with him anymore in this version, the utter feeling of despair Naruto feels here here would be much more effective, and the inspirational speech Hinata gives to him would feel a lot more welcome as a result. Not to mention, Tsunade's death would also be an incredible lead into Sakura unleashing her 100 healing mark as all the characters get ready to fight the Ten Tails. We're starting to reach the point where I'll only need to make a handful of smaller changes to the characters now, because the Konoha 12 actually do something here. Now, some of them get more than others, like Ino redirecting an entire Biju bomb from the Ten Tails and Lee blitzing Madara and kicking him in half, which didn't end up accomplishing much, but it was still pretty cool. But with the 4 Hokage and Sasuke joining the battlefield, it only makes sense these guys would take a bit of a break from the limelight to accommodate them, and the role they're given of killing these fission beings makes sense when you take this into consideration. The only problem is with how it reads, as these moments just sort of happen without any greater purpose other than the writer saying, see, we gave them something to do. All we need to do is reframe these moments as being a direct help to Team 7's approach of the Ten Tails' body. That way, the Konoha characters can feel like they're meaningfully contributing to the battle without taking any of the focus away from the main characters. The actual attacks they launch, though, will be the same. Mostly. I mean, Kiba will still go giant dog mode, Hinata will still do her 64 palm, Shino will do whatever this is, Choji will still be dead, and because of that we'll have to change Shikamaru's and Ino's attacks to be more basic shadow possession and mind transfer shenanigans, and Sakura will still be going on a rampage with her 100 healing mark, just for a lot longer and without that shitty ass moment of Naruto and Sasuke having to bail her out again. Speaking of which, if this is meant to be a triumphant Team 7 moment, and Sakura is supposedly one of the main characters because she's a member of Team 7, and this is also the moment where Sakura is meant to catch up to her teammates and stand by their side as an equal member of Team 7, then after she summons Katsuyu alongside Naruto and Sasuke summoning Gamakichi and Outer respectively, she should also charge the Ten Tails with them. It's absolutely ridiculous to reduce her to a fucking medic, so she'll be going in with the other two. All that's left is a rapid fire list of the more minor changes and we're done here. First, Naruto won't be giving the allied forces those QB cloaks because Kurama's been extracted from his body. Second, Naruto will mostly be using Sage Mode in this portion of the war, and we can even have him summon Fukusaku to maintain it now that Kurama's not there to mess up with his chakra flow. Third, we're giving all of Sai's scenes to Shino. Fourth, any scene Tsunade was in originally after she fights Madara, she will no longer be in, and the scene where she just heals Shikamaru from near death will give to Kabuto or Sakura, either one works. Fifth, Kabuto will take Orochimaru's place in every scene he's in from now on. Sixth, we're cutting the scene of Naruto acting like Sakura is his girlfriend to Minato because he's with Hinata, and seventh, Minato should not have half of Kurama inside of him. It was extremely stupid, doesn't serve a purpose anymore since Naruto doesn't need it to be revived in this version of the story, and makes Naruto's final scene with Kurama in the anime feel really weird because this isn't even the Kurama he befriended, it was his other half. So let's apply these changes to the next couple of scenes. The fight against Jubito will stay the same, except Naruto will be using Sage Mode and Sakura will be there to help out. This does mean the fight would probably be shorter though, since Naruto would naturally find out about Jubito's weakness to Senjutsu much earlier on if it was literally all he was using in the battle. The stuff with Naruto and Minato going Biju mode won't happen since neither of them have Kurama inside of them, but we can keep in this moment of Obito taunting them because it's good. The allied shinobi forces won't have QB cloaks anymore when they all rally together to retrieve the tailed beast, and once Madara takes center stage and steals all the tailed beasts back, Naruto won't die here again since Kurama wasn't extracted from him this time, which means any scene connected to that would be removed by extension. This leads us to the last big complication of the series, the Sage of Six Paths reviving both Naruto and Sasuke. This is a terrible asshole, but I've spent so long writing the script that I honestly don't care anymore. The only thing I really want to do here is take out the details of Naruto and Sasuke being reincarnations of Ashura and Indra respectively. I know some people think it doesn't technically conflict with any of the themes of the show, but it's still pretty lame. At best, it's just this out-of-nowhere thing that didn't have to happen in the slightest. Naruto wouldn't be dead here, but he'll still have the vision. I don't know, Hagoromo's this otherworldly alien fucking deity. I'm pretty sure he can make it work. There's one more thing I want to take out of this scene, but I'll get to that once it becomes more relevant. This next one might be petty, but I'm removing this scene of Sakura shitting the bed and hesitating to destroy Obito's Renegon. I don't know why Naruto's story goes out of its way to make Sakura look as pathetically useless as possible, but I really hate it. Obito can still defy Madara with Kakashi backing him up though. That's still a good scene. Just don't come up with this totally unnecessary setup which ultimately only makes one of your characters look worse. Speaking of unnecessary things, Guy's fight against Madara is awesome, but the way it ends is really dumb because Guy should have 100% died here, which is exactly what's going to happen in this version. And with that, we've finally made it to the home stretch, Naruto's and Sasuke's fight with Madara. So a couple of things here. Madara will have both of his Renegon at the start of this, Kakashi's Sharingan will have gone blind since he's been spamming it this entire war, and Sakura will be here from the beginning as well. Sakura will engage Madara alongside Naruto and Sasuke because she's finally caught up to the two of them and add to the strength of the attacks they launched in canon. The Infinite Tsukuyomi will cast a genjutsu on everyone else, causing a brief break in the fight, and here lies my biggest change. Zetsu will not stab Madara in the back because he'll be completely loyal to him in this version. Kaguya will not exist, she did not need to, she was a worse villain than Madara, and I hated her. Instead, this scene will be replaced by Obito breaking free of Zetsu's grip on him, attempting to kill Madara, and then failing. Madara will kill him instantly, and since Kaguya doesn't exist anymore, we can take that vision of Rin guiding him to the afterlife, place that here, and have Obito give Kakashi DMS as a result. Like with the Sage of Six Paths, this is a really stupid ass pull, but I don't care anymore. So, with his newfound power, Kakashi will come up with the same strategy he did for Kaguya, the team will pull it off on Madara, and Naruto and Sasuke will seal him away with the power of the Sage of Six Paths, releasing all of the tailed beasts in the process. And since I've given up trying to fix any of the ass pulls, I might as well add one of my own. Kurama will just magically go back inside Naruto after this fight, which means the stage is set for the perfect final showdown we got to see between the two protagonists in the anime.